All right, welcome everyone to the fourth webinar that we are doing as part of our Growing Globally Wash Beyond the Walls campaign. We're trying something new here with a live audience and doing it online. So welcome to those who are joining online and those that weren't able to make it to our Faith Work event. We're glad you're able to join online and be a part of this. So today we're going to be hearing from some of our Alaska team, and they're going to be sharing about some of the things that they're doing in WASH in the context of Alaska. And so I'm excited to kind of get an update of what's going on. I know a lot of I get questions all the time, people asking, well, what's going on in Alaska? And so now's your chance to hear about what we're doing in Alaska, and we'll be able to see some of the things that are going on. If you're here and wanting continuing education, make sure you sign up on the sign up sheet that we've got. So this session, you can get continuing education for it. And so make sure you sign up for that. But I'm going to turn it over to our Alaska team, and they're going to take it from there. Amiah.
Hey, good morning, everyone. We're really glad to be here with you today and talking about all the amazing things that we get to be a part of in Alaska. We have a lot to get through today, so I'm going to jump right in. These are the learning objectives if you are doing this as a continuing education class. So first, we're going to start off with a couple introductions, just so you know who's talking to you. My name's Amiah Fezer. I have a background in environmental science. I'm not actually an engineer. I've been doing project management for about 6 years now in the WASH sector. Started out with Samaritan's Purse, was in Myanmar, Cambodia, North Carolina, Yemen, and then my husband and I had the joy of joining EMI about a year ago, and we are now based in Nome, Alaska, where we both get to do WASH. Yeah, a little bit about me, and I'll turn it over to Judith.
Hi, I'm Judith Grunau, and I also don't have an engineering degree. I have an architecture degree from Virginia Tech, and I live up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I've been working with EMI for, I guess, since 2021. And prior to that, I did a lot of work with rural Alaskans, helping to design healthy, sustainable, and affordable housing, and it transitioned very well into helping try to solve the problem of healthy, sustainable, affordable WASH system. So how did we get here? How did EMI end up in Alaska is a question we definitely get a lot. And it actually started with the Helmsley Charitable Trust. The Helmsley Charitable Trust had been working in sub-Saharan Africa on healthcare projects primarily. And they found that whenever they funded an organization and that project went very smoothly and was successful, that turns out EMI had been involved somehow, whether it was master planning or concept design. So that EMI was on their radar when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the Helmsley Trust was no longer able to vet projects by traveling to Africa to see if they were viable projects that they wanted to fund. But they had been introduced. Walter Panzier is one of the trustees. He had been introduced to the need in Alaska. There's an organization called the Rasmussen Foundation that runs a grant makers tour, and they bring different funders up to Alaska and basically share with them the needs of Alaska and the projects and work going on there to see if there's any matches from funders if they want to do it. So Walter had learned about the great need and healthcare issue of not having proper sanitation, piped water systems, or sewage systems in much of rural Alaska. So when COVID hit, he said, well, why don't we see if EMI can go up to Alaska and develop a project that might help impact the WASH services up there, that might help impact this problem. So EMI went and visited and partnered with Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, among others, to figure out what could be done, and came up with a project proposal to help impact the WASH sector in Alaska and hopefully make a transformational difference up there. And that's how EMI ended up there. So we now have 3 employees up in the state of Alaska. I'm in Fairbanks. The other employee, Travis, is the engineer, and he is in Homer, Alaska. and Amiah, as she said, is in Nome. So let's talk a little bit about what makes Alaska a little bit unique, and why are there so many challenges there. So contrary to the belief that most maps demonstrate, Alaska is not an island off the coast of California. Yeah, and it's not very small. Instead, Alaska is actually a very large state, and it is larger than California, Montana, and Texas combined. And if you were to fly from the furthest west point in Alaska to the furthest east point in Alaska, it would be as if you're flying from LA to New York City. So just to get everyone a concept of how big it is and how, as a result of being that big, how diverse it is. So not only with its climate is it very diverse, it's not all cold, but it's also very diverse culturally. So Alaska has one of the largest percentage of populations of indigenous people in the United States. It's 20% of Alaska's population. Now, Alaska doesn't have a large population, so it doesn't have the largest number of indigenous people, but it does have the largest percentage. It has 229 federally recognized tribes and 20 distinct languages that are spoken, in addition to English and other languages. So Alaska Natives have been in this part of the world for generations and generations, thousands of years, and their culture is very rich with tradition, the tradition of living off the land, and just different values that have come from that. It's also important to acknowledge that part of their history includes the trauma caused by settlers and missionaries and boarding schools. And it's important to acknowledge this because when we go and work with these communities, we need to acknowledge that they have been impacted by this and handle how we engage with different communities carefully. So the region we are working in is up here. It's the Seward Peninsula region, and it's known as the Bering Strait region. If any of you watch reality TV, there's a lot of gold panning and crabbing shows that are really scary that are up there, but really life up there is not as scary as it appears on reality TV. It is also one of the points in Alaska that is very close to Russia, as you can see. Within that region, or actually I should say statewide, there are a lot of unserved people. Unserved communities means that the majority of the households in that community do not have piped water and sewer. So there are 32 unserved communities in Alaska and 3,300 homes throughout the state that do not have piped water and sewer. In addition to that, there are 4,500 more homes that are connected to aging systems that are basically beyond they're at their design failure point. In the region we're working in, there are 5 unserved communities, 600 unserved homes, and most of the homes in the region are connected to aging systems that are constantly failing. So yeah, Alaska's way of life, Alaska Natives' way of life is still very much tied to the land. Their traditional ways of hunting and fishing and gathering are still practiced all the time. They use this as one of their main food sources. They share them with elders, they share with the community, and it's not just to keep up the practice of tradition. It's also one of the most economical and healthy ways to get food up there. So most of the food that comes in when it's not hunted, fished, or gathered is food that is flown in from wherever it's produced in the lower 48 or outside of the US. And it is very expensive and oftentimes not as healthy. So they rely on this to feed their family and to share with the community and also to keep up their traditions. It's also important to mention that that these communities where you saw them on that map, they're relatively new locations. So a lot of these Alaska tribes had a settlement that they would go to for winter hunting and a settlement they would go to for summer fishing. And so they weren't necessarily migrating all over, but they definitely had a couple different places that they would settle in. And when the US, when it became a state, the US started establishing schools and just decided that the school would be in this location. So all of a sudden, the community was often tied to that location, regardless of whether or not it flooded in the springtime or whether or not it was a bad place for storms in the fall. So it created even more challenges in a challenging environment, because people now felt tied because they wanted to educate their kids, or they wanted to have a post office or electricity or whatever was being offered. So they were tied to land that maybe they wouldn't have chosen to be on all the time. It's also important to mention that that Alaska Natives have a foot in both worlds. Because of that newness, they have become very modernized very fast compared to the rest of the US. So you do have these traditional values and these traditional ways of being, but you also have cell phones and computers and the internet, and they use it for their hunting too. They're going to use the snow machine to go out and get the moose. They're going to use their cell phones to contact somebody to let them know where the good fishing is or whatever it might be. So they have their foot in both worlds, and it's a tricky balance, and it can be an also amazing thing, and something that when we go to communities and have meetings, that we need to listen carefully, because having your foot in both worlds really gives a lot of knowledge that is super helpful in when you're going into design things. So you can look at all the weather data, you can look at all of the latest and greatest technologies, but they might not work in that area, and you won't know it unless those people are sharing with you, like, oh no, don't let that sewage run out into the ocean over there. That's where the best crabbing is. You know, you're not going to know that. Or we get wind drifts that are incredibly, wind blowing that causes incredibly high snow drifts. So there's no way you're going to be able to do that flush and haul system that you thought you could do. You know, just different things that you might not know unless you've been living there for generations and generations. And that actually is a great segue.
So narrowing in a bit more on the challenges of WASH in Alaska, we're going to talk a little bit about these three needs and challenges that all play into this. So first, climate. As I'm sure you've probably heard, Alaska's pretty cold. In Nome, we're a couple degrees latitude below the Arctic Circle, so it's already basically winter up there. And when you're trying to have flowing water and wastewater, you can draw the conclusion there. It's very challenging to keep that flowing, especially if your pipes aren't insulated well. This means that in order to have piped water and sewer, there's a lot of different technological considerations that have to go into that. You know, from insulating your pipe to maybe having a heat trace in those pipes so they don't freeze, to, you know, making sure that whatever you install isn't just going to immediately break apart. If you have a freeze up, obviously that can be very catastrophic very quickly for the whole system and leave a village without water for the entire winter. Also, because these systems have to be so technologically unique, they can be very expensive. I'll show a picture in a minute of just one component of the system, and that'll give you an idea of just how many millions of dollars have to go into making a good sustainable infrastructure up there. Along with that, our construction season is very narrow. You basically have from June until about now to get your construction projects done. And so that creates a challenge in just trying to get this infrastructure installed or maintained or whatever you were trying to do. And that also conflicts with subsistence season. If you are trying to build an entire system or make repairs at the same time people need to be fishing and gathering, that's just a natural conflict that occurs that you have to overcome. Along with that, logistics is a huge challenge. As you saw, Alaska is massive, and there's not a road system throughout most of it. This means that all of your materials, your personnel, your tools have to either be brought in on an airplane or on a barge or a boat in the summer when the ocean's not frozen. And so, as you can imagine, that also drives up cost of construction. Roughly about 50% of your project cost in Alaska is going to go towards shipping materials. So quite expensive. And then also personnel. You're either needing to bring in personnel by plane or by boat, if you can get people to leave their families for the summer when they're trying to do vacation to come do construction. Or if you're hiring in the community, again, people are trying to do subsistence and their way of life at the same time that these projects need to happen. Or even year round, if you have people maintaining these systems, working on their subsistence, anything else that might be going on, they often end up wearing a lot of different hats and different roles in the community and are going to be very stretched and overwhelmed sometimes because of that. So here's a picture of what we call Arctic pipe. It's probably about this big, if you can imagine that. And inside of there, there's a ton of insulation and also a glycol heat trace line. And that's what's keeping your water from not freezing during the winter. So this is just, again, an example of one component that you have to get on a barge up to Alaska at the proper time to get installed and then make sure that line does not freeze up throughout winter in order for people to have water or sewer. Narrowing in even more on the water and wastewater need, this picture is what you imagine it is. This is how people have to deal if they don't have piped water and sewer in their communities. A lot of people use honey buckets, which is essentially a 5-gallon bucket with a trash bag inside and a toilet seat on top. And that is your toilet. And when that trash bag is full, you have to take it out and empty it somewhere. And so obviously this is a huge wash health challenge. People are very much in contact with fecal matter, which leads obviously to a lot of wash related diseases. It also becomes a huge challenge when in the winter and you have those massive snow drifts blocking your road or your snow machine alley. How are you going to get your honey bucket bag to the lagoon or the dump site to get rid of it? And so what a lot of people end up having to do is they leave them outside of their homes all winter. And then in the spring, this becomes a massive public health crisis because now you have all this fecal matter melting along with the rest of your snow, flowing into your streets. People have to walk or drive through that. So it's a huge, huge wash challenge. And you think, oh, well, we might want to, start working our way up that sanitation ladder. The challenge in Alaska, again, with technology, you can't just go dig a hole or do a simple septic system without still a lot of work and design going into that. So that's why a lot of people are still relying on honey buckets today. Looking more closely at the water, here's some statistics on the amount of water that's used on average in the US. So us in this room, we're looking at maybe around 82 gallons we're using per day for all of our water related needs. The global sphere minimum, this is, the basic, what the World Health Organization recommends people need just to survive is 3.96 gallons or 15 liters a day. Alaskans not on the piped water and sewer systems are 1.5 to 2 gallons per day is what studies are saying they're using. So as you can imagine, that is really a tough challenge for them. Along with that, they are, well, the reason this is because they also have to haul water to their homes. Maybe there's a common watering point in the community where they have to take their 4-wheeler, their other 5-gallon bucket, go fill up the water, bring it back every day. Again, huge challenge in the winter, especially. And they have to pay for water by the gallon, which, if you can imagine, that gets expensive very quickly. In some communities in Alaska where they're on piped water and sewer, they might be paying $4 per month for that water as an equivalent. And then in these communities without piped water, that equivalency is about $50 per 1,000 gallons. So they're obviously trying not to use a lot of water and conserve that as best they can. A huge challenge with this, again, is hand washing, key part of hygiene. What people will do is have a wash basin in their sink that doesn't drain the water, and you're going to use that water over and over again to wash your hands. And so by the time that water is replaced, often its microbial activity is equivalent to that of raw sewage. And so again, huge wash-related health concern that people are having to deal with just because they don't have piped water and sewer. So here's a closer example of what a honey bucket looks like. The one on the left is what you would see even in a public space like a city hall. So it's not just people's homes, it's infrastructure that the whole community is using that still has to cope in this way. And then this is a honey bucket dump site. Those are all bags of poop being dumped next to a water source, as you can see, and that's just what they have to do. And so again, you can imagine if these aren't able to be dumped in this site and they're piled up outside of people's homes, what a wash challenge this is. And so EMI, we've been able to come in with this project and start looking at where are the gaps and how can we support in Alaska. So for the last 4 years, we've been learning about this situation, learning about all the different actors who have a little piece of the puzzle that can help solve this issue. And so the big thing we've been able to be a part of helping create the last few years is the Community Utility Assistance Program. What this has done is it brings together all these different organizations, you know, the health corporation that might have the public health piece of the puzzle, some of the state and federal entities that might have the funding for doing water and sewer and getting people piped water and sewer, other tribal organizations that might have funding or capability to support the communities and running their utilities, and bringing them all together to be better coordinated and provide better support to communities. So we've been grateful to be a part of helping start organizing this and bringing it together. And this organization chart just kind of shows some of the key organizations in this community utility assistance program and kind of their different roles that they play in that. As you can see, there are a lot of different organizations and a lot of different moving parts that have to happen. And so why this community utility assistance program is such a big deal is it's focusing on software and sustainability. So we talk and watch a lot about the hardware or the infrastructure. You know, we've been talking today about, you know, challenges of organizations going in and giving a community a water or sewer system and then walking away and saying, great, have fun, hope you enjoy. And obviously that's not great for sustainability, for behavior change, any of these things that we want communities to have to be able to thrive with these systems long term. And so the Community Utility Assistance Program is focusing more on the software side of WASH, where we're looking at operation and maintenance. What are you going to do for repairs long term? Training of staff, who's going to operate the system and who knows what to do if something goes wrong. Also looking at the regulatory side, you know, water sampling, and also the financial and managerial assistance. How are you going to pay for the system? Who's going to collect the fees from users? All of these different parts that have to go in to actually make the system sustainable long term. And so we've been specifically supporting this as EMI with some technical assistance on kind of the operation and maintenance side. We've provided personnel. I've enjoyed working with our partner organizations up there, and our other team members also support in different ways to help get this program running. And we've also been able to do some funding for key initiatives as part of this program. So ultimately, the goal with this is we want to empower these communities, provide them the support system that is going to enable them to sustainably run these systems they have long term. Whether they have them now and it's the aging infrastructure that needs updated and constantly maintained, or as we hope in the future, when they do finally get piped water and sewer, they'll be prepared to take that on and manage it long term for the benefit of their community. So zooming in even more to the Community Utility Assistance Program, one of the specific ways that this program is supporting is operation and maintenance. And so what that looks like is day-to-day on-call technical support, where water plant operators and communities have phone numbers they can call. They can reach someone and say, hey, I'm having this issue. What do I do? What support can you offer me? And the CUAP is able to respond to that either with advice, sometimes providing tools, or sending someone out there to actually help them do the repair. We're also able to support with preventative maintenance planning, helping operators and utilities get a plan in place so the system is being maintained regularly, and hopefully we can prevent emergencies or freeze-ups from happening. There's also some emergency response. In the winter, there are freeze-ups that happen, and we want to be on call to help make sure those do not become catastrophic and major repairs that have to be worked on for years afterward. We also provide assistance in advocating and seeking funding for some of these repairs and upgrades. Again, using that network of organizations that we're coordinating together to make sure communities are getting all of the support they need. And then one gap EMI specifically saw where we could jump in is looking at mid-size repairs that need done in these water treatment plants. So federal and state funding is able to do the big infrastructure projects. We're talking, you know, millions of dollars to either be able to repair major parts of the aging infrastructure or provide the brand new water and sewer. But there's very little in the way of support for just doing those littler repairs that keep a system going before something becomes that big of a repair to be made. And so what we've been able to do is fund, first of all, engineering assessments for all of the water and wastewater systems in the communities in which we're working. And then from those, we started a critical deficiency repair program where we have people going out there and making these repairs and upgrades that will help prevent systems from freezing up or having other failures and enable them to continue operating for a longer period of time. And so we're doing this in about 12 communities right now, and we're very excited to finish that up next year. I'll turn over to Judith to talk about the rest of the CUAP.
So we have learned in Alaska that when you are dealing with WASH, you're not actually only dealing with the technical side of things. Like Amiah said, there's the software side of things too. And part of that would be the business side of WASH. In these communities, they very much are rural. They seem very far away, but they're actually, their systems themselves are more peri-urban. You have to have a municipality to run it. So each of these villages, ranging from 70 people to 500 people, have their own municipality with their mayors, their accountant, their water operator, you know, the list goes on. But there aren't that many people. So say, for example, in a community of 70 people, your mayor might also be your water operator. They're wearing many hats, and it gets very challenging. There's also a lot of turnover because people are burning out because of that work being very challenging. So on the accounting side of things, what you often end up with is somebody who is trying to do payroll and billing in these communities or the taxes, but they're also running their job and raising their children or teaching or whatever it might be. And they get overwhelmed and they burn out, and they leave what is undone for the next person to pick up. So there's a backlog of systems that are no longer working, a backlog of taxes, a backlog of payroll or billing. Oftentimes the billing doesn't get sent out properly and people aren't paying into the system, thus there's no money to actually pay for repairs or pay their water operator. So it becomes kind of a waterfall effect. So EMI has realized one way they support it is that we could help fund a program within the Community Utility Assistance Program that would assist these municipalities. And we could get people out that are trained to use QuickBooks, that are accountants or have been doing payroll for a long time. And they could go out and help in the communities to get that backlog taken care of. And then to get them set up or trained in QuickBooks or trained in how to do it, or offer billing services to help the water treatment and in some places sewage collection be more sustainable. So when we talk sustainability, it's not always about earth-friendly things. It's also about the sustainability and longevity of how are you going to pay the people who are running all of this. And one of the systems that they have to do in Alaska, in order for a lot of these communities to get funding for projects and major repairs, they have to get what is called a best practice score at a certain level. And that score does not only include like having your preventative maintenance plans in place, but it also includes making sure that your billing and payroll and taxes have been met in order to then apply for funding for whatever system or upgrade that you might need. And it's quite an unfair system because in a community that small, it is a lot to ask of them to meet a certain requirement that you're asking of everybody in the US and in these small communities to meet, or in tribal, oftentimes in tribes or reservations, you'll see this system going into place. You don't see it as much for municipalities that are not tribal. So this system kind of keeps them down from getting the repairs they need. And we have realized through the Community Utility Assistance Program and this municipal accounting support system that you can help them raise their scores and help them to get to be able to apply for funding for these projects. Another way that EMI outside of the Community Utility Assistance Program, another way that we have figured out how we can support some of these projects, and Amiah touched on it, but is to do some of the technical writing or technical memorandums. For example, in the community of Wales, they are an unserved community. They have a watering point and they are on honey buckets. And so they want piped water and sewer services. So the first step is to do a preliminary engineering report. But Alaska is short on engineers. Did you guys hear that? So there is a plethora of backlogged projects that are waiting to become the project that the engineering company can take on. And as a result, there are a lot of communities that just have to sit there and wait for somebody to help them with this. So the first step, preliminary engineering report, EMI decided, well, we have enough expertise that we can take that on. And we did that for the community of Wales to get them on into the system to get on the path to piped water and sewer services. So there's a system to get in within the state that raises your priority level in order to get funding from federal or state organizations. Another way is that because of this backlog, because of the lack of engineering organizations, there are what have been now known as legacy projects. Major repair projects that have been in the system so long that they are a legacy, and there are plenty of them. And we found that in the community of Koyuk that we could help them out by doing a technical memorandum for their, I believe it was their main sewer line had been in disrepair for going on 15 years, I want to say. And by writing the technical memorandum for them, they were able to apply to the USDA Rural Development Program to get funding to repair their main sewer line so that they wouldn't have raw sewage in their streets every spring. Another way that we have been able to use this funding to support WASH programs is statewide remote monitoring. So for this, we partner with the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, and they are doing this across the entire state. And it is a way to protect systems from critical failure by having somebody who can monitor it remotely. We touched on the subsistence lifestyle. So oftentimes subsistence requires the water operator to go out to get food for their family when the fish are running, when it's moose hunting season, whatever it might be, and they might not be there to monitor it, but this is a way that somebody outside of the community can see what's going on. They can get a text message to their phone when there's a critical failure. They can call up the supporting kind of substitutes that are in the community to go see what's going on, or they can send a remote maintenance worker that can fly in from Nome to help with the repairs. So it helps them by troubleshooting as well, and it gives them a real-time view of the plant function, what's going on. This would be the dashboard that you could look at online at any point in time to see how things are going, to see the temperature of the water inside the holding tanks, whether or not the pumps are running, the pressure is good in the lines, you know, all the things that you engineers would really probably understand better than me, but I'm learning. It's a very good example of it. And if one of these systems gets too far into the well, they're in red, but into the wrong direction, then a text alert can go out to that water plant operator to fix it. This is a good example of one of the instances where this occurred. There was a water storage tank and an ambler, and the height dropped really rapidly. So they could see that this alerted the operator, who diagnosed that the transmission line from the well had frozen, and thereby he was providing no water to the storage tank. The water in the tank was then used to jet or unfreeze the transmission line, causing a steeper drop in the tank level. Once the well transmission line was unfrozen, the tank could begin to refill, and that's what this graph is showing. So it's a huge lifesaver, because if this freezes up and you do not fix it fast enough, that community will not have water until spring. So it's critical to have these alerts in place. Another way that we are involved outside of just the Community Utility Systems Program is with home repairs. So we've talked a lot about all the infrastructure work that is going on, and those are more on the large scale. They don't actually come to the home. So you could do all the repair work you want, you could put in all the pipe systems that you want, but if you're not actually taking care of what's happening inside the house, then your system fails. And the issue in Alaska is, or the challenge in Alaska, is that a lot of the housing stock is aging or aged out. So housing stock in Alaska is a really good way to visually see the booms and busts of the state. You know, the stuff that came up during the gold panders, you'll see the old log houses and things, but more so when oil was found. you would see it. So you'd see houses building maybe when the schools were established, but oil was the big thing. So most of these homes came into play being in the 1970s, when there was a boom in Alaska and houses could be built. But nobody was actually thinking about how the houses should be built or how it could be built for Alaskans. So they would put, modular houses on barges that were designed in California, and they were sailing from Seattle, and they dropped them into these communities. So you can imagine, 150 years later, why these houses are not really holding up. Not to mention that the distance that you would have to travel to get repair things. So if something breaks in your house, it's gonna be hard to get parts to fix it. And a lot of people aren't used to repairing their homes. So I think with the, now being able to go onto YouTube and figure it out, it's a little bit easier if you have internet in your community, which many of these communities can't really access internet that easily. But you still won't be able to get the parts, or you won't be able to get the parts fast enough before they cause a lot of damage in your house. So there's a great challenge to doing your own repair work, and a great challenge to the homeowner education on how to do these things. I think most people in the US don't know how to fix their own pipes, much less a rural Alaskan. I think that there are very innovative Alaska Natives that live in these communities. They know how to repair their snow machines. They know how to repair, their photovoltaic solar panels. But a lot of people still can't, fix a toilet, or if the toilet breaks, what are you gonna do? So it leaves us with a lot of needed home repairs. So we partnered with Rural Cap. They're a community organization that helps with housing in Alaska. And in the community of Elam, there are 34 homes receiving repairs. And then we will also work with Rural Cap to provide training. Or if any of you want to come up and do training, do it. We will invite you up to do that. And providing water day, which Maya will touch on later. This photo, I just wanted to point out kind of the repairs. A lot of times what happens is cold water will come into a warm house. It will cause condensation around the toilet. That will then seep into the floor. And if there's any crack in the vinyl flooring, your subfloor deteriorates, or you get mold, and then the floor erodes. And now you're looking for a major repair of getting your lumber in, your subflooring in, your vinyl in, plus fixing that toilet. One solution has been in larger cities to heat the water that's coming into your toilet, which is very interesting when you're on the toilet. But this solution is very costly, so you're not going to see that happening in these communities very much. Or it's a technology that wasn't available when the system was put in this community. So people try to repair it themselves with what they have, whether it's duct tape or another piece of wood that they put over it.
So moving on from talking about what EMI is currently doing with all of our partners in Alaska to what the path forward looks like, both for this next year as we finish out this initial grant we've received, and what we hope to do in the future in Alaska. So first, we're going to continue to build. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. Yeah. So this alphabet soup is a very good demonstration of one of the things that we've learned in Alaska, and it's that when you work in the U.S., I think it can be applied all over the U.S. as we do more work here. You need to know what organizations are involved in it and what the services are. So we've had things like SDS, the Sanitation Deficiency System. You have IHS, the Indian Health Services. You have the USDA, U.S. Rural Development. You would have the EPA involved, the Environmental Protection Agency, Village Safe Water. The list goes on and on and on. But it's important, and we've learned, to know what all of these organizations do, to know what the systems of funding are. And it's a huge learning curve that has allowed us to be able to potentially go elsewhere, not only in the state of Alaska, but throughout the US, because we now know how the funding systems work for doing these big projects. So we'll build upon that in the future.
We're also looking forward to doing more home repairs in more communities, because we do see this as a huge need in Alaska, and one that a lot of organizations just don't have funding or capacity to address. So we're excited to continue to hopefully partner with RoCap to expand that into other communities that are also saying we need help preparing our homes so we can realize the benefits of piped water and sewer in our community. Another exciting thing we're looking forward to doing is offering to install mini PATH systems in people's homes. So PATH stands for Portable Alternative Sanitation System. We were talking earlier about that challenge of going up the steps of the sanitation ladder in Alaska, again, due to the technology. This is a system a lot of partners in Alaska came up with as one potential intermediate solution while communities are waiting for piped water and sewer. So first, what you have is a vented honey bucket. And so what that does is it takes the smell out of your house. It might seem like a simple thing, but it's huge for improving quality of life for people who are using honey buckets. This means if you're getting the smell out of your house, keeping those pathogens away, it's going to improve your health. You no longer have to have your honey bucket in a cold bathroom or even a front porch isolated from the rest of your house to block out the smell. You can now have a nice warm place to use the bathroom. Some of them also are separating toilets, which makes, first of all, reduces the smell by separating the urine and feces. And then it also makes it easier for them to deal with that waste when they have to empty the honey bucket, and means they have to empty the feces less often just because it's not filling up as quickly. So we're really excited to work with those systems. The other part of this, we were talking about the wash basins and how hand washing is a challenge. The cabinet you see is a low flow gravity fed sink just to allow fresh flowing water for every time they need to wash their hands. They don't have to reuse the water over and over again. As you can see, it just empties into a bucket below the sink, so they can easily get rid of that wastewater as well. So over 400 of these systems have been installed in Alaska as of this year, and partners are seeing great success with them. So we are also excited to partner to install these in communities that still might be 5 to 10 years away from getting piped water and sewer. And we're excited to see hopefully the health benefits and improved quality of life and improved dignity that comes from that. And then we're also looking forward to continuing to partner with the local church. As Judith mentioned, as part of our home repair project, we are currently doing in Elam. We had the privilege of getting to come alongside the church and partner on a water day, which was a day not only to educate the community about their water resources, but mostly to celebrate the abundance and blessing of water they have in that community, and also just to bring everybody together for a time of fun. So we loved just getting to partner with them and encouraging the community that way. As you can see here, we had kids out in the rain, just playing with water games, playing with balloons. We were all completely soaked by the end of the day, but kids are tough up there. The cold did not bother them as much as it did us. And so we love getting the chance to come alongside the churches, and we're looking for more opportunities that way to partner, not only in WASH, but in other ways that we can identify to continue to serve and encourage and bless communities together. And lastly, as we look at finishing out this project in the coming year with the CUAP, we want to continue to build sustainability, ensure our partners are ready for us to step away and they have the mission and vision, resources and tools they need to continue to operate the CUAP long-term, as long as the communities need it. We're also looking forward to hopefully exploring the possibility of replicating the Community Utility Assistance Program in other regions in Alaska that have the same need. And so, yeah, so this is just a very quick snapshot. We covered a lot today of all the different work going on in Alaska, the need, the challenges, how we're meeting those, and we hope to continue to meet those in the future. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Jason to tell you about the rest.
Thanks. So thank you so much, Amiah and Judith, for coming and being a part of this. It's been great for me to hear and to see the things that are going on in Alaska. And yeah, I'm excited about the future of what we've got going in Alaska and the ways that we can serve communities. So I wanted to just give a few announcements as we close out this webinar. So the next webinar will be the last one of this year, which we will hear from our Cambodia team about the things that they're doing in WASH. So the opposite side, literal opposite side of the world from Alaska. We're going to Cambodia next. And you know, hoping, we're excited about the things that they're involved in as they get invested with partners and communities. And so you won't want to miss that webinar. It's on November 19th. It's World Toilet Day, in case anybody was wondering. But it'll be exciting to hear from them directly on some of the opportunities and strategy of their WASH program as they've been developing it. So I always want to end these with just some next steps of how you can pray and give and go with EMI. First of all, we covet your prayers because the WASH community development that we're trying to get into is much bigger than just EMI. And so we're praying on this. We're constantly in prayer and having you know, asking God to lead us in this. So we also covet having your prayers as well as we go into this. But as you're praying, also can ask God how He wants you to get involved, if that's in going or giving or something else. But there's opportunities in Alaska. We actually have there's one of our partners is hiring a project manager right now, and so if you are interested in working in Nome and being part of the CUAP and the work that we're doing there, talk to Amiah. She can give you a job description on that, and you know, see if you want to join that. But there's also opportunities within all of our offices. As we grow in WASH, we want to be able to equip our offices to have the people and the resources needed to do it. So if you're interested in being part of one of our offices or an office plant, as we look to start 2 new offices by 2030, and one of those will have a WASH focus, is what we're planning. So if you're interested in doing that, talk to us, and you know, we'd love to have you be a part of that. And also, I will say within WASH, there's more than just engineering. The civil engineers are, you know, we talk about that being necessary in water and sanitation, but you know, as our Alaska team talked about, we have people that are working in accounting and other realms of things within the communities. We need people who are able to engage in communities and do community development. And so it's not just engineers. So we if there are others that are interested in, Judith is an architect, like she mentioned, we can even take architects, bring them into community WASH work. And so yes, if you're interested in getting involved, let us know, and we'd be glad to get you connected in that. And then finally, you can give. There is a QR code on the screen there that will take you directly to our Growing Globally campaign, where we're looking to raise $500,000 over this year to be able to support the work in our different offices and the things that we're doing and growing in WASH around the world. So go to that, and if God's leading you to give, we invite you to join us in that way. So with that, we'll open up for a few questions. We've got about 12 minutes for this webinar. So Judith and Amiah are here to answer any questions that you have in the room, or if you want, if you're online, put those in the chat, and we'll be able to read some of those off as well. So got a little bit of time to do that. We'll get going.
Yeah, so can you flip over to the other, the slide where it shows the vented honey bucket, the gravity sink system? So that's an area that is not served by water system, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, what is that thing on the right side underneath the cabinet?
Water filter.
Oh, that's water.
Because the water, the point of source where they're getting their water might not be a treated source.
Oh, so they pump it from
The gravity water would feed into the filter before being pumped. Or actually, what is the
So you see in the open cabinet picture on the right, that's actually a water tank up there.
top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can you kind of repeat what the questions to the people online?
Oh, yes,
right.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a question about how the sink is working in the mini pass system we're seeing here on the screen. So basically, remembering, okay, so what happens is there's generally a tank on the ground that people can pour water into. There's a little pump that takes it up into that cabinet you're seeing, and there's another water tank up there, a little bit of a water treatment system in there as well. It's not going to make your water potable, but enough to make it good for hand washing. And then that gravity flows into the sink you see and then drains into the other bucket you see down below the sink for easy disposal.
And this system was not designed by EMI, but it's one that we hope to use. It was designed during a, trying to remember the name of it. Water and Sewer Challenge by a team of people from ANTHC as well as other organizations around the state, including Camp Water, which is now called Silverline. So if you want to find out more information about this, you can either go to, contact us, but ANTHC's website or the Silverline website will have more information.
I was looking at it and I thought that was a tank RO unit, but I was like, it shouldn't have RO there.
That'd be very fancy. Yeah.
Very fancy.
Any other questions?
How often is there like a barge delivery there? And well, from a logistics outlook, I imagine barge would probably be the cheapest way to get bulk there. How often are the deliveries?
Well, you have to wait till the water thaws. So you wait for, so the question was, how often do the barges come up to these coastal villages in Alaska? So you wait for the spring thaw of the ocean waters before they can start running. So the first barge will likely make it to Anchorage by May, and then it'll make it up to Nome by June, and then out to all these other smaller communities in June after that point in time. And that's barge one. Barge two will make it back up there in about, I think, August to most of them, September for some of the lower, this further south ones. So you basically have two opportunities to get all the materials that you need. And your building construction season follows that same schedule. You can build when the ground thaws. Your construction season is May through September. If you're lucky, you get October too. And so you have 5 to 6 months of being able to do outside construction. And that is also when your materials are coming up. So a lot of people will have to plan a year in advance and have everything ready and on the barge so that it either arrives there in the fall and overwinters in a Connex box, a shipping container, or they have it scheduled to arrive in June and they just try to get as much 24-hour around the clock construction going until October when the snow flies.
Why isn't distillation more popular?
So the question was, why isn't distillation more popular? Do you know the answer to this? This is a good engineering question.
Yeah.
Jason, do you want to answer this?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if they've used distillation within the communities. Yeah, I don't know. That would be a question for Travis, maybe, who's not here.
I guess I can speak from a Yemen perspective. We looked into using it in Yemen, but the challenge is when you're doing distillation, it's very energy intensive, which again could be a problem up here in Alaska. And also it doesn't produce that much water. So if you're looking at providing more than 2 gallons a day to a large population of, at least a couple hundred in these communities, it was thousands in Yemen, then it's just really not a good sustainable solution. Especially Alaska has such a rich amount of, it's got, I forget the exact percentage, but a large majority of the United States fresh water actually in Alaska. So like the resources are there, you just got to keep them thawed.
And get them to the location you need to be. And I think the touching on the energy point is one that is worth talking about. So just like all of these are kind of peri-urban environments with their own utility systems, the same goes for energy production. And most of their power is diesel generated and it's very expensive. So even though Alaska is known as an oil state, all of the oil gets piped down the pipeline, put on a barge and taken to a refinery in the lower 48 and then shipped back up to Alaska and distributed by barge to all of these communities. And the cost of that, you can just see that the cost of shipping it once and then shipping it again and getting it refined makes the cost of fuel and shipping of everything a lot more expensive than it would be in other locations.
I have a question.
I'm sure it's cost prohibitive, but have like gray water toilet systems been considered for like individual home use?
So the question is regarding whether gray water systems have been considered for in-water home use. I think that it were for in the toilets that I'm assuming, right? I think that the greatest challenge to that would be the approval of a gray water system. So you don't have inspectors that can come out and approve these systems. And going back to this housing stock being very old, putting a new system like that into the house, if it already has existing pipes, you're having to create a whole nother gray water loop of plumbing into a house that is very old. So if you're building a new house, you might be able to consider putting it in. It will add to the cost of the house, which may exceed the affordability of it, but it's worth considering. Now, I know there are simpler systems where the sink water will directly go into the toilet. And I think it would be just a matter of, you might be able to use those in places where there already is piped water and sewer, but in a place where there isn't piped water and sewer, you still have to get the water to the sink to get enough for the toilet. And then if a lot of communities maybe get piped water, but then they don't have actually sewage treatment. So when you're putting it into the toilets to use, it's not a water scarcity state. We actually have a lot of water. The issue is getting the water to and from the house. So gray water will help you when you have a water scarcity, which you don't have here.
Is there geological like prohibitions against using leach fields in like the tundra?
So the question is whether or not there are prohibitions of using leach fields in the tundra. I can answer it. Okay. It's not prohibition of using it. It's that it's not effective. So permafrost can be 8 inches under the soil. Some places it's 8 feet under the soil. So doing a shallow, if it's 8 feet, it's where I live in Fairbanks, Alaska. It's about 8 feet underneath. You can do leach fields and septic systems. But in a lot of these places, the permafrost is so close underground that you would really not be able to do a proper leach system. And you would really only have, 3 months out of the year where that ground is able to leach anything out.
The last question, I think. What natural resources does Alaska have that are not currently being like utilized for, like, it takes so much effort to get building materials to Alaska? Are there no trees there? I'm just curious.
Wait, do we have a picture of no? I think we have one. Well, it's right on the coast, right? It's the very beginning of our slideshow. Yeah, so this is Wales. There are no trees, right? When you start to get close to the Arctic Circle, it's a little like being above tree line. So this is another example. This is actually the best one. I'll leave it here. No trees. And this is actually not that close to the Arctic Circle. So you get kind of the same effect with the lack of trees there. So where I live in Fairbanks, there's actually a lot of trees. So a lot of people build with log. Before air pollution issues came about, there were a lot of biomass energy use. One thing, now we're getting into energy and a little away from water, but they do play hand in hand, which is part of our CYP thing. Lowering the cost of energy can help you get the pipe water systems in. Geothermal is a big one that hasn't been fully tapped into in the state of Alaska, and might lower the energy costs for a lot of Alaska. Wind generation and solar are being looked into as well. And one thing we did look into with this funding was to partner with the NTHC to try to get solar projects in a few of these communities to lower the cost of water and sewer.
We have a couple of questions from the chat. And since we're getting close to the end, I'm going to throw both of these at you and let you decide how you want to answer. One question was how long and I think they're referring to the mini pass system. How long have we been using that, and how have you been able to determine how long they last and if people continue to use them?
Do we need to repeat that? Those questions?
I don't
Well,
know, because it was in the chat.
Okay, we're answering the questions in the chat.
Okay. Yes, the mini pass, it specifically, so there's a larger system that's just called pass. That's been around a bit longer, but the mini pass itself was actually a development as a result of COVID. We recognized hand washing was a big thing that hopefully we're all still doing after COVID. But, again, these communities are using basin. They recognize we need to find a solution to this quickly. And so the mini pass came out of that. So it's still a relatively new technology, actually. I mean, that was only 4 years ago COVID happened. And so there's some studies coming out now showing the health benefits of it, and they're positive, which is great. I think long-term sustainability, you know, we're still gonna have to see the systems that have been installed. We're getting positive feedback from. I've talked to a couple of villagers who've used them who, you know, again, like a big part of WASH is the software, the behavior change education, you know, telling people about the importance of hand washing. We need to hear that in this room as well. And so again, you know, if there's that challenge of I still need to haul water to my mini pass system to then put it in the system and wash my hands, they might just say, no, I'm going to stick with wash basin. You know, that's been working fine. And so there's still that educational part that needs to continue to happen and that value that needs to be taken up for that part to be sustainable. Infrastructure wise, again, we'll find out how long these systems last. So far, so good. And we're excited that our partner we're hopefully going to be working with on these systems does a really great job at both of those sustainability pieces.
Okay, and then the second one. Generally, how far are reliable water sources in Alaska transmitting water to the rural communities, and are local groundwater sources common, or is it primarily surface water?
Alaska's big, so the answer to that is yes, all. Yeah, it really is. You're gonna find it. So, but I would say, in the region we've been working in, we'll answer for that. A lot of the sources of water are groundwater sources, surface water sources. Your lake, or they'll build an infiltration gallery for a river to flow into. And they are often quite far from the communities. And we try to make sure that these sources of water are ones that the community knows is good water. So they are gonna, if you draw from a source of water that is maybe a little bit closer and the community is like, that water tastes bad, they're not going to use the water. So what's the point? So you want to also make sure that not only you testing the water, but it's the water source that's trusted by the community. In the case of Wales that we worked in, I don't remember the exact distance, Travis might, if you don't, Jason. No. But I want to say half mile at least, getting it from there. And it actually, the water source that was trusted was very small and couldn't meet the capacity, or can't meet the capacity that the community needs. So the water source that needs to be used and that is being used now has a high level of naturally occurring uranium in it. And so it's a matter of combining the two water sources to dilute the amount of uranium down to an acceptable level, and making sure that the trusted water source is the one that's mainly used, and then storing up the water for winter. So you're piping it all the way in from that far source and then building gigantic water storage tanks to house it the whole winter, and making sure that those water storage tanks have their heat all the way wrapped around them so that they're not freezing up. So I answered a little bit more than that question, but it's a good example if there is challenges to what you're saying. Are there any other questions on the line? No? And we are at our time.
Close now.
All right, thank you all. And if there are any more questions in the room, we'll be here afterwards to take it. But those of you online, thank you for attending, and it's a pleasure presenting today.